Sharon here with the next installment of your Firestop Coffee Break training. In this video, we're going to introduce you to the Hot Rod XL Firestop device and explain how to use it in a 1 or 2 hour fire-rated gypsum wall that lands underneath the flat concrete deck. So you could be talking about a post-tension deck or maybe a hollow core concrete slab. If your project is going to use the Hot Rod XL, we want you to be able to know that it's installed right. That means that you need to understand the Firestop details and how the product should be installed. No matter what Firestop material you're going to use on a project, you want to know that it's done right. So if you're using sealants or sprays, please be sure to watch the other videos. If you're dealing with fire-rated shafts, flat decks, fluted deck, there's a whole series of videos that are designed to help you know that the Firestop installations meet the building codes, the specifications of your project, as well as the industry standards. For now, however, I'm excited to be able to show you the Hot Rod XL. That is this device right here. The Hot Rod XL pairs the Hot Rod's compressible foam with this intumescent Firestop strip that will expand to fill the deflection gap and prevent the movement of fire, smoke, and toxic gases to the non-fire side of the wall. This section here will receive the drywall mud when the wall is being finished, and then this piece helps keep the mud out of the joint. This section here can be removed once the joint compound is installed if the finished installation is going to be visible, or you can leave it in place if you prefer. The last part is this flexible leg that covers the Hot Rod compressible Firestop and gives the product a clean finish. You can paint it or leave it exposed depending on what your designer wants. The Hot Rod XL offers excellent STC values and L ratings. We talked about these in the Hot Rod Type X segment, but I want to ask you a question about this. Who on your project is responsible for ensuring that the Firestop details meet the STC and L rating requirements? I can't really answer that question for you. The answer is likely buried in your contract somewhere. I'm just pointing it out so that you know that someone should be looking at these things. If that someone happens to be you, then here's a quick rundown on what to look for. For the STC values, that information will be listed in the product data sheet. That is, if it was tested to provide an STC value. If the fire-rated joint detail was tested according to UL 2079, which is the standard for fire-resistant building joints, then the same upper panel of the UL detail where you see the hourly rating, the lower segment will also show you the L rating. Now, there's more to it than just looking to see if there's an L rating in that section, but again, we'll get into that on a video on L ratings and smoke barriers. If you want to join us for that, just let me know. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the installation of the Hot Rod XL. Again, we'll be working with the detail HWD0624, just like we did with the Hot Rod Type X. So some of this will sound familiar, but I want to recap quickly. We can use the Hot Rod XL for both 1 and 2 hour rated walls. Check. You can see the same joint width, and you know that we'll have to dig into the detail a little bit to see what joint sizes we can use, as well as what movement requirements we can expect when we're using the Hot Rod XL. This will be about our rated floor. You can see that it'll be a minimum of 4.5 inch lightweight or normal weight concrete, or possibly a hollow core concrete slab. Now we'll look at the specifics of a rated wall. You'll need to review the actual UL listed details for all of the specifics of the connections, framing members, and studs. But you can see here that you're able to use any U400 or V400 wall assembly as long as the rest of the system requirements noted in the detail match the field application. Now remember, you need to check everything. Do you have the right size framing member with the right depth, the right gauge, and are they using Type X drywall? All of those little parts and pieces of your fire-rated wall are important. Let's see what the detail says about the joint when they're working with the Hot Rod XL. The allowable joint size and movement capacity will vary depending on the product being installed. Now, you know that from looking at the header of the Firestop detail. Let's look a little bit closer. This section of the UL listed detail shows us that the Firestop installation is going to be found in 3A4. So that means the maximum installed joint width is 3/4 inch, and the movement capacity will be 80% compression and 33% extension. So we're going to change gears here and look at how to evaluate the installation of the Firestop head wall devices to be sure that they're installed properly. Now, it doesn't matter if you're an architect, an owner, the general contractor, the pre-construction team, the drywaller, the Firestop installer, a building official. Maybe you're part of the QA/QC team or even the third-party special inspector. This last section is critical to ensuring that the products are installed properly, so let's walk through this together. To do that, you'll have to revisit the Firestop details. Now, this is an exercise that you should do with every single Firestop installation, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about rated joints or through penetrations. You simply can't properly evaluate a field installation without comparing it to the listed system. So, let's take a look at the installation of the Hot Rod XL. This one can actually be installed 2 different ways. It can be installed after the drywall goes up, in which case it would go in like this. The foam segment compresses against the concrete and the white flexible gasket will disguise the fire stop, while the mud leg will get covered with tape and mud. The other way that it could be installed is to simply staple it to the drywall before the drywall gets hung. And then when the drywall is installed, the Hot Rod XL will go against the concrete and this compressible member will press against the deck above. Let's look at what the detail says. You can see here the last line, it says the perforated leg may be attached with 1/2-inch staples every 6 to 8 inches. May means that you can do it if you want, but it's not a requirement. It gives you the option to do whatever works best for your installation. Now, you know I was a kindergarten teacher, so I want to ask you to use your imagination for a moment. I want to ask you to think about the last project that you worked on that had a PT deck. Literally, picture the PT deck. Was there any variation, any humps in that floor slab? The Hot Rod XL will easily accommodate this variation and still maintain your fire rating and your L rating. Now, I would love to say that the Hot Rod XL and the other devices that you see in this series can't be installed wrong, because it just doesn't sound reasonable that anyone would install this thing backwards or upside down. But to be clear, that doesn't mean that it won't be subject to special inspection on projects where it's required. Because as we'll discuss, you have to make sure of little things to make sure that they're done right. It just means that the Hot Rod Type X, the Hot Rod XL, the fire bead, and the fire gasket are all considered devices, and they will not require destructive testing if the inspections are properly coordinated. The inspection standard requires a pre-construction meeting, and it's a good idea to discuss the stages that will be required so that everything is coordinated properly. The same is true for any other head of wall installation, especially if you're looking at shaft wall assembly. Let me explain this a little bit. The International Building Code requires third-party special inspection of fire stop for certain buildings. And when you're on a project that requires special inspection of fire stop, that would be a high-rise risk category 3 or risk category 4, you'll want to be sure that you schedule your inspection during the right phase, and that should be discussed during the pre-construction meeting. Even when you use fire stop devices, you still need to meet the inspection requirements. But that's a discussion for another video. What I want to share with you here is that when you have destructive testing, you have challenges. First, you have to be sure that someone's schedule is to have the destructive samples repaired. And second, you have to be sure that the fire stop team is aware of the location of all the samples so that nothing gets missed. But when you use fire stop devices, assuming that you schedule things properly, you can eliminate the risk that your special inspector's destructive samples don't get repaired simply because destructive testing isn't going to be a requirement. But again, I want to point out the use of devices in head of wall installations does not mean you can forego inspections. It just means you don't have to do destructive testing. And when things are scheduled properly, that will speed up the overall inspection process. However, when it comes to inspecting devices, there is a specific sequence in which they should be inspected. And this can change when you're looking at shaft wall assemblies versus a standard gypsum wall. It will be clear as you look over your fire stop details, but we'll give you more on that later.